Chapter 6, A Friend Among the Shadows. It felt like days since Else Johannes and Bastian had stopped running. But it was only hours. Time had become slippery, thin, a mocking suggestion rather than a measurable flow. Their feet burned, scratched raw from roots and stones, their lungs aching from breathing air that tasted faintly of ashes and the faraway burning of incense. The forest no longer seemed familiar, nor friendly, and the shadows felt thicker with every step they took. Else paused first, leaning against a tree whose bark was rough and smelled faintly like old spice and something medicinal. Johannes wiped sweat and dirt from his forehead. Bastian tried to speak, but his voice came only in rasps. He simply pointed ahead. Something moved. Not shadows, not demons, but something small, delicate, human. A boy emerged from the tangled foliage ahead of them. He was barely 19, slender but strong. He held a bow of polished wood, the string vibrating softly as though he just let an arrow loose. The feathers at its end glowed softly in the dim twilight. His eyes were clear and deep, like calm lakes hidden by mountains. He wore nothing but a saffron cloth tied simply around his waist. He regarded them silently, curious and amused. "Why are you running?" he asked softly, his voice rich and calm, devoid of fear or worry, as if running from demons through a haunted forest was nothing out of the ordinary. Else looked at Johannes, who shook his head slightly, mistrustful. Bastian was breathing heavily, staring blankly at the boy's bow, his mind still trapped in the horror behind them. We read something," Else started shakily. "An ancient chant. It was a mistake. Now something's after us. Monsters. We don't even know what's real anymore." The young man smiled, a slow, gentle smile that softened his already gentle face further. "Ah, a chant," he said quietly, nodding as if he had expected this. "Come with me. You must be exhausted. I have shelter nearby. You'll be safe, at least for a while." Johannes hesitated. "How can we trust you?" The young man's smile widened, just slightly. "Because I asked nicely?" he teased gently, then turned without waiting for them to follow. Else felt something strange, a faint tugging at her heart, almost as though a voice whispered softly to trust this stranger. She stepped forward without consciously deciding to, Johannes and Bastian following uncertainly behind her. They crossed shallow rivers, stepping carefully on stones that shimmered softly under moonlight. They passed through small valleys wrapped in mist, breathing air cool and damp and fragrant. Finally, nestled between tall, whispering trees and climbing ivy, was a small hut. Else eyed it skeptically. "This is it," the boy laughed quietly, his voice echoing gently. "Don't worry about the size. It has room for all who need it." Johannes frowned doubtfully, but Else, despite herself, smiled at his confidence. They stepped inside and gasped softly. The interior was large, spacious, impossible. The walls were rough-hewn logs, fragrant and golden brown, adorned with small hanging herbs and strange, beautiful instruments. Else caught herself smiling at this peculiar magic trick. "You're good," she said to the boy, smiling. "You know, you're really playing your part beautifully. Very convincing." Johannes shot her a warning look, shaking his head. Bastian's eyes widened nervously, but Else laughed softly, shaking her head at them both. The boy simply smiled gently, his dark eyes sparkling with silent laughter. "Sit," he said warmly. "I'll make us some food." He vanished into a small back room, and Else, restless as ever, wandered slowly outside. She didn't see it until it was right in front of her. A tiger, massive striped fur blazing under moonlight, emerged from the bushes silently, yellow eyes glowing fiercely, fixed upon Else's trembling form. Her breath froze in her chest, her heart thundered. Else's scream tore through the forest, sharp and wild. Johannes and Bastian burst out behind her, freezing instantly when they saw the beast. Then, impossibly calm, the young man stepped forward from behind the hut, drying his hands on a piece of simple cloth. His eyes twinkled, almost playful. "Oh, don't worry," he said quietly. "She just came to see me. Her great-great-grandmother had helped me a long time ago." Else stared at him, eyes wide and disbelieving. "What the she whispered, trailing off in stunned awe. The young man chuckled lightly, gently stroking the tiger's massive head. The ferocious beast purred, leaning into his hand as though it were just a kitten. The tiger turned, tail brushing the young man's legs affectionately, and followed him inside as naturally as a house pet. Johannes glanced at Else, mouth slightly agape. Bastian looked equally bewildered. Else just shook her head, speechless. Inside, they sat quietly. The young man handed them cups filled with a warm fruit mixture and bowls of steaming soup. Else eyed it doubtfully, whispering softly to Johannes, "Looks like dirt water." Johannes tried not to laugh, but the moment Else lifted the bowl, the fragrance hit her. The first sip exploded on her tongue. Warm spices, sweet fruits, a rich broth that warmed her bones. Her vision blurred. Warm tears fell from her eyes as the memories of her mother flooded her. Afternoons spent cooking together, late-night talks in the kitchen. Her final days spent softly singing lullabies, holding Else's hand with a gentle grip that faded day by day. Else closed her eyes, holding the bowl like it was her mother's hand. When she finally opened them, the young man was gone. She slipped outside quietly, drawn by soft, rhythmic sounds. There, beneath the starlight, stood the young man, bow in hand, eyes locked forward. He drew back the bowstring, each motion perfect and silent, and loosed an arrow. It struck the wooden target with a vibration. Else felt deep inside her chest. His eyes were no longer soft. They were fierce, glowing sharply like lightning in dark skies. Behind him, the tiger now stood majestically, muscles rippling beneath moonlight, eyes alert, guarding him protectively. Johannes and Bastian ran out frantically, their faces pale, eyes wide. "Else, he's not what we think," Johannes stammered breathlessly. "He's Ayapa. He's a lord, an ancient god. I don't know if he's good or evil." Else stared at the young man, the reality of his presence now rippling through her with a force that made her breath quicken. Still, she felt no threat, only safety, quiet trust. "He's helping us," she whispered uncertainly. Bastian shook his head, panic rising in his voice. "We don't know that. We don't even know what side he's on." Driven by fear, Johannes and Bastian began retreating into the darkness. Else hesitated, heart torn. Then suddenly the young man turned. The gentle face now shimmered with divine intensity, his eyes radiating wisdom, fire, and endless serenity. His voice echoed like distant thunder, soft yet powerful. "We will meet again." He turned to the tiger, gently touching her massive head, smiling with affection. "Protect them," he said quietly, yet clearly. "Don't scare them." The tiger growled softly, as though acknowledging the command, then bounded swiftly through the darkness, disappearing like an arrow shot by the very bow the young god held. Else stood motionless, watching the divine youth's figure dissolve softly into the night. Her chest felt full, confused, comforted. Then she turned, following Johannes and Bastian toward an unknown darkness ahead, unsure whether they'd found a god or had simply brushed closely with a deeper mystery. Behind her, the night whispered ancient stories to itself, silent as breath and deep as forgotten rivers. And there, in darkness threaded with moonlight, Chapter 6 softly closed.